Hey,
Hi.
this was a good one.
Yes, it was. I actually enjoyed this more than I was expecting to. I mean, there's probably going to be quite a bit of racism next week when we do the second half.
We were,
This
yeah.
half was good.
Well, there kind of was in this half too. um, and oh my God, yeah, and ableism, and
Yeah.
I mean, you name it. If there's a prejudice, it's appearing in Conan Doyle's work. Um. Oh wait, I just need to. Okay. Okay. Welcome to Goodnight, Mr. Holmes, a podcast about the Granada Sherlock Holmes, which ran on ITV in the UK between 1984 and 1994, and ran on Masterpiece Mystery in the US around the same time. I'm Laura,
And I'm Rachel.
and today we're looking at episode 20 in this series. I mean, we're just stringing them all together and calling the whole thing a series.
Yeah, we're going with how BritBox has it organized.
Right. Which this one is called The Sign of Four. And this is going to be a two-parter for us because it's a super long episode. So we're cutting it in half for the purposes of the podcast, and we'll pick up the other half next week.
Yes. The Sign of Four was first published in Lippincott's monthly magazine in 1890.
And I have notes on that.
Uh-huh.
Really interesting ones.
Tell us.
Yeah. Okay, so this episode was filmed in 1987, right after Jeremy Brett was released from the hospital for bipolar treatment. And the public knew about the hospitalization, but they didn't know the reason. And there was even a brief rumor going around that it was AIDS, but that fizzled out. I mean, in 1987, anytime a celebrity went into the hospital, there was going to be an AIDS rumor. But Brett seems really good in this episode. He's like even keeled without those strange exclamations and outbursts and leaps into the air. I mean, there's some drama, but it's not on the level that it was previously.
Mm-hmm.
So this episode opens with some very threatening music.
Yes, we have a different intro.
Yes, because it's a movie. They're releasing it as a movie and not as the TV show. I mean, we consider it all the same thing because it's the same people and the same characters. But yeah, this was a 90-minute movie. In yet another huge stone country manor.
This one is very castle-like.
Okay, I have notes on that one too. This is why I was late. There's someone who is collecting a lot of Asian artifacts. They're barring the door, and a large man carrying some kind of fur pelt is staggering on a wooden leg while looking at the house. Inside, a dead man lies on a chaise, covered with flower petals, and a person
browning and flowers.
Yes. A person is putting these yellow floral like lei necklaces around his face. And as this is going on, the large man outside is drawing closer and closer. And we see that the fur pelt is actually a sort of costume inhabited by a small man with bare feet. And he's making snuffling noises and carrying a primitive looking axe. And so already we're in racist territory.
Yeah, I think I was too busy taking notes to really take in that costume.
Yeah, it's a bad costume. A third man who has these mutton chops and a big mustache takes a seat in the room next to the dead guy. He appears to be kind of sitting watch. The wooden leg man and his small companion enter the house and club this guy over the head with the axe. Then they walk past the body on the floor into the room where the dead man, surrounded by these flowers, is lying. The wooden leg man puts a note on the dead man's body, and the note says the sign of four with some kind of symbol drawn in what looks like blood. And it's hard to see because of all the flowers. And the music reaches this threatening crescendo and the scene ends. So that's an opener.
Yes.
At 221B, a small carriage pulls up and a young woman gets out. She's gorgeous, wearing a white cloak and a pale blue dress that matches her eyes. Watson is watching from the window, and he really needs to put his eyeballs back into his head. There's a very pretty woman crossing the street, and I think she may be coming here, he tells Holmes. Holmes has been playing his violin, but he stands up and he's completely ignoring Watson's line of thinking. Incidentally, I've glanced over your latest account of my work. Honestly, I cannot congratulate you upon it.
And it then cuts to Watson, and the look on his face is like, oh, this shit again.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They've had this argument 500 times. And it, I was like, oh, they're just an old married couple at this point. And Holmes goes on, detection is, or ought to be, an exact science. Observation, deduction, a cold and unemotional subject. You have attempted to tinge it with romanticism, which has much the same effect as if you'd worked a love story or an elopement into the fifth proposition of Euclid, which very modest.
I would read that, though.
I know, I would too. Very modest of Holmes to compare himself to Euclid. And he sits down at this table where there's this huge construction of beakers and pipes filled with red liquid. It kind of overwhelms the whole scene. And to my mind, it looked a lot like some of the fantastical things that my brother used to build with his erector set. I mean, it's just like sprawling all over the place. And there's a knock at the door. Who can that be? Holmes says dismissively. So clearly he's not listened to a single thing Watson has said. Mrs. Hudson comes in with a silver tray. There's a young lady to see you, Mr. Holmes, she says, and he snatches the calling card off the tray. Miss Mary Morstan. I have no recollection of that name. And
I was like, did you think this was going to be a social call? Like, you get clients here all the time. Why would you
I know
this name?
He's just acting like it's a weird combination of bitchy and thoughtful.
Yes.
And he really is in a snit. As Miss Morstan comes up the stairs, escorted by Mrs. Hudson, Watson awaits at the door because he just can't wait to meet this lady. He turns to Holmes. I was right, he says. Mary Morstan is played by an actress named Jenny Seagrove, who up until then had some fame playing Emma Hart in A Woman of Substance and Laura Fairley in The Woman in White. And she went on to have guest roles in both Endeavor and Inspector Lewis. And
coincidentally, John Thaw is playing Jonathan Small,
whose name will come up in this episode, but we never actually see him.
Yeah, we don't see him in this episode. So next week will be Inspector Morris with Sherlock Holmes.
Yes. I've come to you, Mr. Holmes, because you once enabled my employer, Mrs. Cecil Forrester, to unravel a minor domestic complication.
And I just want to say, I understand it's a sign of the times, but Mrs. Cecil Forrester, like, why should they call women by their own names when we can just refer to them as an appendage to their husbands?
That's not going to happen until at least the 1970s.
It's infuriating.
I mean, even in the 90s, when I was married, I was getting letters addressed because that was back when we used to send mail to, Mr. and Mrs., etc.
Yeah. One of the wife of one of my dad's colleagues, this was many years ago when the two of them were working together at the university. She was saying that the university, which employed her, would sometimes send mail to her as, Mrs., husband's first name and last name.
Yeah.
And she would just throw it out. She's like, I'm sorry, that's not my name. You know what my name is. If you want to send something to me, send it to me.
To me, not to my husband. Yes. I mean, the implication there, too, is that the husband is going to open the mail and, that he's entitled to the contents therein because.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so this woman, Miss Mary Morstan, sits down on that weird wicker sofa and says, I can hardly imagine anything more strange, more utterly inexplicable than the situation in which I find myself. State your case, Holmes barks at her. And she's a little startled. He's really being exceptionally rude. And I want to know who pissed him off that day. Probably Watson and his writing. Mary Morstan asks Watson to stay. She tells Holmes her story. And she says, Watson might be of inestimable service to me.
She doesn't explain how.
Yeah. Watson's in kindliness mode, and he says, "Of course."
Yeah. In this story, at the end, Mary Morstan becomes Watson's wife. She doesn't in this version,
Mhm.
thankfully, because the age difference is.
Ugh.
Young
enough
but
to
they
be.
didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't scrub out everything when they decided not to have them married off. And there's very romantic music that plays as she enters.
Yes. And
So you get these occasional moments that you're like, this is kind of creepy, actually.
So Mary starts out briefly. The facts are these, and Holmes gives this sigh of complete annoyance, which, if he's so annoyed,
this guy is like, fucking finally.
Why doesn't he just cut her off and send her away if he's so annoyed? I mean, he's done that before, and he's just being rude for rudeness' sake. My father was an officer in an Indian regiment. My mother died when I was quite a child, and he was forced to send me home, despite the fact that I had no relatives here. I was placed in a comfortable boarding establishment at Edinburgh.
Do you mean boarding school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I remained there until I was 18 years of age. And Holmes is fidgeting, sighing impatiently.
I mean, to be fair, this is this is really boring, and most of it is probably not relevant.
Right. Yeah. In that same year, my father, who was a senior captain in his regiment, obtained 12 months' leave and returned home. And Mary's smiling at this memory. She really loves her father. He telegraphed to me from London to say that he had arrived all safe and directed me to come down at once, giving the Langham Hotel as his address. His message.
That is a real hotel.
I have notes on this. Yes.
Yeah. Regent Park. It's a luxury hotel. It had indoor plumbing and hydraulic lifts, elevators. Yes. The Prince of Wales was at the opening ceremony, and among the people who stayed there were Mark Twain, Napoleon III, Dvorak, Toscanini, and Sibelius.
So the hotel also has a blue plaque, one of those historical blue plaques, commemorating the night that Conan Doyle, Oscar Wilde, and Joseph Marshall Stoddart, who is the editor of Lippincott's magazine, met for dinner, during which Stoddart commissioned The Picture of Dorian Gray and The Sign of Four.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is a little hat tip to Stoddart in this story. I have another note on this too. After World War II, it was bought by the BBC, which used it as extra accommodation for employees. And one of those employees who stayed there was Guy Burgess, who was one of the notorious Cambridge 5 spy rings who defected in 1951 to Russia.
Wow.
Now the place is, as you said, a 5-star luxury hotel. And I would love to stay there because it sounds sumptuous.
Yes.
So we can draw from this fact that Morstan was staying there that he was well-to-do.
Yep. And it also raises the question of where did he get all that money? I can't imagine an army officer would be paid that much.
Not a captain, no. On reaching London, I drove straight to the Langham Hotel, Mary continues, and was informed that Captain Morstan was staying there, but that he had gone out the night before and had not returned. So I waited all day without news of him, and she's like near tears. And that night, on the advice of the manager of the hotel, I communicated with the police. And Holmes is now paying attention. For the next day, we advertised in all the newspapers, she said. Our inquiries led to no result. From that day to this, no word has ever been heard of my unfortunate father. And she starts to cry. He came home with his heart so full of hope to find some peace and comfort. And instead, this is Watson's cue to sit down next to her. And he's
Holmes had been looking at her and listening intently, but as soon as she starts to cry, he looks away.
Yeah. So Watson kind of makes his move here. The date, Holmes says, taking out his notebook, the 3rd of December, exactly 10 years ago.
She doesn't look like she's dressed for December.
No, so 10 years ago. Oh, well, no, I mean, she's dressed for whatever weather. I think it's October that this story takes place in. Yeah, but the 3rd of December is when her father disappeared 10 years ago. And Holmes is sitting next to a mirror, and we see his expression kind of sharpen in the mirror. And he says, his luggage remained at the hotel. There was nothing in it to suggest a clue. Some clothes, books, and a considerable number of curiosities from the Andaman Islands.
And, nothing that could Be a clue or anything.
This isn't okay. Andaman Islands is in an archipelago southwest of Myanmar, which of course at that time was Burma and a colony. And at this time
It's a colony of the British at the time.
Yep. And at this time in history, the Andaman Islands housed prisoners of various colonial wars and uprisings.
Yep. They're also home of the North Sentinel Islanders, an indigenous people who have had little contact with the outside world. In 1956, the Indian government declared the North Sentinel Island a tribal reserve and forbid contact within 3 nautical miles. So, of course, in 2018, an American missionary decided he couldn't live with the thought that the North Sentinel Islanders weren't Christian and went there without getting the required permits. And
oh God,
predictably was killed. Yeah, so in an understandable what the fuck were you thinking move, the Indian government charged the fishermen who had carried him over to the island, but did not charge any of the islanders.
Okay, fair. Yeah, I mean that's trespass on a number of levels.
Yeah, it's missionaries.
I know. Oh God,
So bothered by the thought that somebody in the world doesn't believe the same thing I did.
Oh, I have things to say about Eric Liddell in Chariots of Fire. Same. So Mary continues, my father was an officer in charge of the convict guard there, so the prisoners.
That he was really popular.
Holmes is like, he's walking over some papers and books that are on the floor. Watson, this place is a mess, he snaps. And of course, the mess is entirely of his own doing.
Of course.
Had he any friends in town? He wants to know. Only one that we know of, Major Sholto of his own regiment, the 34th Bombay Infantry. Bombay, of course, is now Mumbai. Holmes disappears into his room, and then he comes back out with a clothing brush and proceeds to very energetically brush off his trousers. We communicated with the major, of course, but he did not seem to know that his brother officer was in England, Mary says. It's a singular case, Holmes says, and he's still brushing frantically. Like, this is eccentric shit. Mary walks past him towards the window, and Watson moves close to Holmes. Holmes is pointing at Mary, who has her back to him. I have not yet communicated to you the most singular part, she says. And Holmes moves in closer. He's like, okay, he's hooked. 4 years later, an advertisement appeared in the Times asking for the address of Miss Mary Morstan and stating that it would be to her advantage to come forward. She hands Holmes a slip of paper. There was no name appended. She tells the men that Mrs. Cecil Forrester, for whom she was working as a governess, encouraged her to respond. That same day, there appeared through the post a small cardboard box addressed to me, which I found to contain a very large, lustrous pearl. And Mary pulls...
I could have led with this story, but...
Yeah. Mary pulls out a box from her purse. It's not that small. It's not made of cardboard. It's green with gold trim and little ornate carvings on it.
The fact that she went on about her father is kind of sloppy plotting because she has no way of knowing this is connected.
Right. Yes. I know, exactly. Well, I mean, no one ever accused Conan Doyle of tight plotting. No word of writing was enclosed, and since then, every year upon the same date, there has always appeared a similar box containing a similar pearl with no clue as to the sender. They have been pronounced by an expert to be of a very rare variety and of considerable value. And she opens the box, and these heavy, huge, teardrop-shaped pearls, about 1.5 inches in diameter. You can see for yourself that they are very handsome. And Holmes practically gawps at this. Your case is most interesting, he says. Something else has occurred to you. Right, now she gets to the point. Yes, Mary says, and no later than today. That is why I have come to you. This letter arrived through the post this morning. And she takes it out of her bag, opens the envelope, and hands the letter to him. Envelope, please, Holmes says. And she gives that to him as well. London postmark, October 7th. Man's thumb mark on the corner, probably the postman. Best quality paper, 6 pence a packet. A particular man in his stationery. And Holmes hands the actual letter to Watson to read. Be at the third pillar from the left outside the Lyceum Theater tonight at 7 o'clock. If you are distrustful, bring 2 friends. You are a wronged woman and shall have justice. Do not bring the police. If you do, all will be in vain. Your unknown friend. So the Lyceum Theater is just off the Strand, and it does indeed have pillars out front. At the time of this story, it was the theatrical home of the actor Henry Irving, who did a lot of Shakespeare with Ellen Terry. Mm-hmm. Irving was the first actor to ever be granted a knighthood.
Oh, wow.
He was extremely tight with Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula. And there's been speculation that Stoker was in love with Irving.
Oh, yeah, there was speculation that Stoker was actually gay.
Yep. But Irving was manipulative and narcissistic. And it's generally accepted that the character of Dracula is based on Irving.
That's really funny. I love that.
I could not include that. So that's where they're going. But not before some flirtation on the part of Watson, who is proud and happy to be of your service. So she's going to come back to 221B at 6 o'clock. And at that, Holmes abruptly turns his back on her and looks out the window as she leaves. And this is a whole scene. As she's getting into a cab, Holmes turns back to the camera and he gives this little smile. Watson is watching from the window, waving at her. He's eating an apple. A flower seller approaches Mary, but she gets into the cab. What an attractive woman, Watson says, still staring out the window. It is of the first importance not to allow your judgment to be biased by personal qualities. A client to me is a mere unit, a factor of the problem. Holmes is washing his hands and bustling around while Watson is mooning out the window, eating his apple. Holmes, you are an automaton and a calculating machine. There's something positively inhuman in you at times. I assure you, the most winning woman I ever knew was hanged for poisoning 3 little children for their insurance money. And the most repellent man of my acquaintance is a philanthropist who has spent nearly $250,000 on the London poor.
8.8 million today.
Shades of Jimmy Savile here.
Yeah.
The notorious philanthropist who was a serial rapist of girls, boys, men, women, corpses. But he raised a ton of money for the Stoke Mandeville Hospital. Of course, Granada could not have known this in the 1980s. Yes, it was sort of an unspoken secret, but it never became widely known until after Savile's death. I just wonder if people in the TV industry, because Savile was a TV industry person, like maybe this was, but on the other hand, it comes from Conan Doyle as well. So basically, there are going to be these guys who are horrible and yet raise a ton of money.
Yeah. We know of some our country right now.
Right this very moment. Always beware of, the benefactor.
Yep.
So Holmes at this point is in his top hat and coat. I'm going out and I'll see you in an hour. And then we see him at some kind of like library, looking through these old vast volumes. He's looking up Major Sholto in a really huge book. And then he's back at 221B. He and Watson are preparing to go out with Mary. There is no great mystery in this matter. The facts appear to admit only one explanation, Holmes says. You've solved it already, Watson says. He's combing his mustache. Mrs. Hudson is gathering up the tea things onto a tray. There's a blazing fire in the fireplace. I have found, on consulting the back files of the Times, so he was in the archives, that Major Sholto of Upper Norwood, late of the 34th Bombay Infantry, died just 6 years ago. Upper Norwood, where have we heard of that place before? In the Norwood Builder. So we're going back to Norwood. Holmes is going over what looks like a lock-picking kit. And
that has a tape measure with him too.
Well, that comes in just a couple minutes later. He's putting together his caboodle for the evening. And he looks up at Mrs. Hudson and tells her, "You're dreadfully underfoot." She
ignores him because
right. Exactly. She continues.
The only way you can live with him.
Right. Captain Morstan disappears. The only person in London whom he could have visited is Major Sholto. Major Sholto denies having heard that he was even in London. 4 years later, Sholto dies. Within a week of his death, Captain Morstan's daughter receives a valuable present, which is repeated from year to year and now culminates in a letter which describes her as a wronged woman. But what wrong can it possibly refer to, except this deprivation of her father? Mrs. Hudson has meanwhile left the flat with a tea tray, and Holmes is winding up this long tape, muttering, "Tape measure." And he puts the tape measure in a small wooden box and follows it with a gun. And why should those presents begin immediately after Sholto's death, unless it is that Sholto's heir knows something of the mystery and desires to make compensation? And he loads up the gun with bullets. "Are you ready, Watson?" "And waiting," Watson says, gesturing with his own gun. So they're going in fully armed.
Yeah.
"Have you ever any alternative theory that will meet the facts?" Holmes wants to know, as if he would accept any theory from Watson.
Can you say anything that will let me make fun of you, please?
Right. Yes. "What strange compensation and how strangely made," Watson says. And they gather their coats from the hallway. Watson, I love this, tests the silver head of his walking stick to see if it can sufficiently bonk someone. And they stand outside on the stoop of 221B, and Watson says, "Why should someone write her a letter now rather than years ago? Again, the letter speaks of giving her justice. What justice can she have? It is too much to suppose that her father is still alive, and there's no other injustice in her case that you know of." "There are difficulties," Holmes says, "but there are always difficulties."
Okay, you've poked a couple of holes in my theory. It's
And
fine.
on we go anyway. And it's really smoggy outside, really gray. This is like peak London pollution.
Mhm.
Mary Morstan is in a cab coming towards them, dressed this time in, I thought it was a black cloak, but later we see in better lighting that's dark green. When the cab pulls up to the men, Holmes opens the door and the two men get in and they go off to the Lyceum Theater. As they're driving, Mary says, I mean, she's really good at this. Like, just let me give you another clue that I should have given you from the beginning. By the way, a curious paper was found in Papa's desk, which nobody could understand.
But we didn't find any clues in his stuff.
Right. I don't suppose it is of the slightest importance, but I thought you might like to see it, so I brought it with me. And she hands it to Holmes, who has never met a piece of paper whose contents is more fascinating than its provenance. The paper appears to be of Indian manufacture. At some point, it's been pinned to a board. Only then does he consider the message itself.
The fact that it was once pinned to a board is really a crucial clue.
The diagram upon it, he says, appears to be the plan of part of a large building with numerous halls, corridors, and passages. There's a cross in red ink. On the side is written 3.37 from the left. There is a curious hieroglyphic, the sign of 4, and the music's intensifying here. Carter Singh, Inderjit Singh, Jagadish Singh, Jonathan Small. I guess these are names on the paper. The paper has been kept carefully in a pocketbook. One side is as clean as the other. Mary smiles at this. It was in his pocketbook as we found it. And I'm like, but I thought it was in Papa's desk. But maybe the pocketbook was in the desk.
Maybe it was in his luggage.
I mean, none of this makes sense. Preserve it carefully, Miss Morstan, Holmes tells her, handing it back. I am beginning to suspect this case may be much deeper and far more subtle than I had at first supposed. They arrive at the Lyceum. It's busy and bustling. Flower girls are selling their flowers like Liza Doolittle and My Fair Lady, which also takes place around this time. There's a lot of literary activity.
Yes, yeah, so just one street over, we meet Eliza Doolittle.
Yes, no, it's Covent Garden. Yeah. And the Lyceum, as I said, is just up from the Strand. There's some kind of performance happening in the theater. A guy who looked to me kind of like a hotel doorman.
Yeah, some kind of livery.
Flags down the trio as they start to go into the theater. Are you the parties who come with Miss Morstan? And Mary turns around. I am Miss Morstan. These two gentlemen are my companions. I must ask you to give your word that neither of your companions is a police officer. So we know from IMDb that the man is named Williams This actor played the bartender in the Leaky Cauldron in the first Harry Potter movie, where Harry meets Professor Quirrell for the first time. He was also in Time Bandits and the Kevin Costner Robin Hood movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I give you my word, Mary says. William whistles and leads them to a carriage that's drawn by 2 horses, so it's kind of a fine thing. He drives them to a private house where Holmes raps on the door, and they are greeted by an Indian man in a bright yellow turban who says, "Sahib awaits you." "Show them in, Kit Mudgar, show them into me," a voice calls from across the hall. Kit Mudgar opens the double doors, and we see, dun, da, 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 Ronald Lacey, who played the main Nazi in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, that's him. Oh my God.
Yes.
It's a balding redhead in this one.
I know. He looks, I noted this later. He looks like Wallace Shawn in this.
Yeah, he does. He absolutely does.
So he's got, the actor has this bald cap on with red hair coming out of the sides of his head, like Bozo the Clown.
Yes.
He's wearing a red and gold embroidered velvet smoking jacket that I was quite envious of, and a red and black plaid ascot with a pin in it. He's clearly well-to-do.
Yeah, and we are supposed to see him as kind of a ridiculous figure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he bows and says, "Your servant, Miss Morstan." Less enthusiastically, he says, "Your servant too, gentlemen." And he invites them in. He's kind of like, he's a very twittery, agitated figure. Come into my little sanctum. There, and we see their tiger rugs on the floor, layers and layers of Asian coated rugs. He's got a hookah going, and a mobile is tinkling above them. Heavy drapes in the windows. It's a crowded and busy place.
So very Victorian. They like to crowd it and busy.
Yes. "I trust you have no objection to tobacco smoke, the balsamic odor of Eastern tobacco. I am a little nervous, and I find my hookah to be an invaluable," and he sucks in on it, "sedative."
And Holmes looks very amused at him.
He's blitzing out on the tobacco hits like he's smoking a bong. And I don't understand. He speaks with a faint German accent.
Does he?
And I do not know. I mean, it's a weird accent. I don't know if it's German or, I mean, this guy is English, but he's got this strange, like, I don't know, bohemian almost accent.
Maybe it was a reference to them growing up in India.
I don't know. I mean, they went to university in England, so yeah, I you would think that would be pounded out of them.
You'd think, yeah.
"You will excuse me, Mr. Sholto, but I am here at your request to learn something," which...
Hi, you asked me to come.
Yeah, "it's getting very late, and I should wish the interview to be as short as possible." She's trying to cut through his bullshit, she is.
Which is really funny coming from Mary.
Yes. "It must take some time," he says, "for we have to go to Norwood." And at this, Holmes turns around and stares at Sholto. "To see Brother Bartholomew," he continues. "We must all see if we can get the better of Brother Bartholomew. He is angry with me for taking the course that has seemed right to me. You cannot imagine what a terrible fellow he is when he is angry. If we are to go to Norwood, it would perhaps be as well if we were to start at once," Watson says. "No," says Sholto. "No, that would hardly do. I don't know what he would say if we came upon him in that sudden way. No, I must prepare you by showing you where we all stand to each other. I must lay out the facts before you as I know them myself." And Holmes just keeps staring at Sholto. And he leans in towards Mary. He's kind of slimy. And all 3 of them seem very put off by his mannerisms. "My father, the late Major John Sholto, came to live at Pondicherry Lodge in Norwood some 11 years ago." And then, of course, we have to go back in time. We see the large stone manor that we saw at the opening of the episode. This, in real life, is Allerton Castle in Yorkshire. You are not wrong. It was a castle, which used to very briefly be the home of Prince Frederick, Duke of York, son of Charles III. And he sold it after 3 years. But yeah, Grand Old Duke of York lived there.
Wow.
And we see in this memory a carriage coming in, a man shutting the large cast iron gate behind. In the carriage is the dead man from the opening, presumably Major Sholto.
Although he's alive in this.
Yes. He had prospered in India and brought back with him a considerable sum of money, a collection of valuable curiosities, and a staff of native servants. With these advantages, he lived in great luxury. One of those servants is played by the guy who served as Elijah Wood's stunt double in the first Lord of the Rings movie.
I love that.
It's, yeah. and the guy is old enough to be Elijah Wood's grandfather. So I don't know what stunts he was doing, but okay. And we see Major Sholto entering the house, accompanied by his Indian servants. He walks past a couple of stuffed leopards, a stuffed tiger, a lot of Indian artifacts. It is a grand house with lots and lots of wainscoting, elaborately carved, huge planters filled with, I mean, it looked to me like bamboo. My brother and I were at university at the time. We did know, however, that some mystery, some positive danger overhung our father. He was, excuse me, very fearful of going out alone, and he employed 2 prize firefighters to guard him. Williams, who drove you here tonight, is one of them. And Holmes wipes his forehead at this point, and I think we're meant to get the impression the room is very hot and stuffy, and everyone's still in their overcoats, and they're quite anxious to, like, get on with things. For some reason, he never told anyone. My father had a marked aversion to men with wooden legs. Sholto goes on. Like,
It is
okay.
weirdly specific.
Holmes perks up a little at this. On one occasion, he actually fired his revolver at a one-legged man, a harmless tradesman, as it turns out.
And
So-
Holmes is prowling the room at this point.
Yes, he opens the door to the room. Kit Mucker is standing outside, kind of guarding the room, and Holmes closes the door again, turns around, and kind of gestures as if to say, "Come with me," or "Let's get on with it." I well remember we had to pay a considerable sum to hush it up. Sholto is rambling. Then suddenly my father received a letter. It was obviously a great shock to him. And this is a great scene. We see Major Sholto at the breakfast table in his brocade and quilted satin dressing gown. The brothers, and they are twins, are in the room with him. Sholto's opening a letter and reading it. His hands start shaking, and then he yells at his sons, out of the room, out of the room. Major Sholto goes to the large fire blazing. I mean, these fireplaces are as high as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And he puts the letter on the logs, and we see that weird insignia of the sign of 4 before it burns up.
Yeah, it's not quite like a figure 8, but it's close.
Mm-hmm. Like a figure 8 with an opening.
Yeah.
What was in the letter we could never discover, Sholto continues. His name is Thaddeus, by the way. For years, my father had suffered from an enlarged spleen, and from that moment on, he became rapidly worse. One night, the doctor informed us there was no hope and that he wished to make a last communication to us. And we see Major Sholto lying on the chaise that we saw in the opening scene, his 2 sons on either side of him. And we only ever really see the back of the head of one of them at any given time because
they're played by the same
actor. They must have used, a double for some of the scenes. But yeah, that was something I noticed. They were very clever about that.
Yeah.
My dear sons, Major Sholto says, when we were in India, my friend Morstan and I came into possession of a considerable treasure. I brought it home with me to this house where it still lies. On the day that Morstan arrived home from the East, he came straight to this house to claim his share.
Now we get a flashback within the flashback.
Yes. Where that Indian servant who I was referring to, who was the stunt double of Elijah Wood, brings a tray with a bottle of champagne in 2 glasses. And the 2, army men seemed to have been playing chess with a really elaborate chess set. And Sholto already has like a glass of whiskey in his hand. And Morstan is yelling, "We gave our word, Sholto, a promise. We gave our word and our oath." "Stop babbling, man," Sholto says. "Another life, another world. If you try to betray me, if you dare cross me." And they lunge at one another and struggle. And suddenly, Morstan drops dead. The servant, Tonga, tells Major Sholto, "You have nothing to fear, Sahib. I will arrange everything."
This was Elijah Wood's stunt double?
Yes. And that's
Yes, he did look like he could be.
well, they're both short kings. And so it was done, Miss Morstan, Thaddeus says, in secrecy, of course, but with respect. This is disgraceful, Watson says. Your father's behavior was quite unforgivable. Please, doctor, Mary says, I knew in my heart that he was dead. My father was not a well man. I'm only glad he did not suffer. You're very brave, Miss Morstan, Watson says. I mean, he just really wants to be on her good side so bad.
Yes, he does.
What concerns me now is the reason for this quarrel. I cannot imagine how my father came to be involved with that treasure. I'm afraid that is not clear, Miss Morstan. I can only tell you my father's instructions concerning it, Thaddeus says, as Watson pours Mary a glass of water. Sholto is burbling like he's going to cry. And we flash back again to Major Sholto's deathbed, where Sholto's telling Thaddeus, Morstan's orphan, the greed, the cursed greed, my besetting thing throughout my life, has robbed her of the treasure, half of which at least should be hers. You see that chaplet there? And Major Sholto points to a necklace dripping with these large pearls that for some reason has been wrapped around a bottle of quinine. I had the design of sending it to her, but I could not bear to part with it. You, my sons, must see that Miss Morstan gets her share of the treasure. Promise. And he begins to tell them where the treasure is hidden. But then he sees some shadow through the stained glass window and screams, get him away! For Christ's sake, get him away! And the brothers run out to the garden, but whoever was there had gone, and then Major Sholto died on the spot. And Thaddeus continues, we soon had more striking proof that there were secret agencies at work all around us. The next day, my father's bedroom was broken into, and this was fixed to his chest. Thaddeus Sholto takes out from a very ornate desk.
He makes it sound like it was nailed to his
I know, right. He takes out the note that was just put on Major Sholto's body. Not
very gently placed there.
In any way, yes. And, the note says the sign of 4 and that bloody symbol. Holmes grabs it up. Remarkable, he says. It is the Sikh symbol for the number 4. What the paper means or who our secret visitor or visitors were, we never found out, Sholto says. And my brother and I were much excited, as you can imagine, of the treasure that my father had spoken of. But try as we might, we couldn't find it. It was maddening to think that the hiding place was on his very lips when he died. And Holmes is fixing Sholto with this look of like withering condemnation. He really cannot stand this man.
Yeah.
We could judge the splendor of the riches by the chaplet which he had taken out. The pearls were evidently of great value, and my brother was averse to parting with them, for between friends he was a little inclined to my father's fault, meaning greed. And it was all I could do to persuade him to allow me to send Miss Morstan a detached pearl at regular intervals, so she would not feel destitute. 'Twas a kindly thought, Mary says.
And all he did was keep them and not sell them to get money.
Right. No,
so she wouldn't be destitute.
She decided to become a governess instead. We were your trustees, Thaddeus says. That's the way I looked at it, although my brother did not altogether see it in that light. We had plenty of money ourselves. It would have been in such bad taste to have treated a young lady in so scurvy a fashion, Sholto says. Yesterday, an event of extreme importance occurred. We found the treasure.
Again,
why are you leading with the important thing? And Holmes whirls around. I'm thinking this exact thing. Like, what the fuck?
I hate everybody involved in this case.
Nobody gets to the point. Hence my instant communication to you, Miss Morstan. Now, all we have to do is drive to Norwood, and he hits this large golden gong and claim our share. Kip Muckar comes back in, bringing a large, oh God, I love this, furry hat, which Sholto puts on. It looks ridiculous.
Yeah, he's dressing like he's in Siberia in winter.
Yes, exactly. He's got this huge fur coat on. We shall be expected, if not entirely welcome, visitors. You have done well from first to last, Mr. Sholto, Holmes says, forgetting how Sholto wasn't telling the story the right way around. My health is somewhat fragile. I am compared to be a
Valetudinarian. Someone
yeah,
utterly anxious about their health.
a hypochondriac.
Yeah.
And then he puts on some insanely huge mittens and they leave. And then we see them at Pondicherry Lodge. And Thaddeus is leading Holmes up this large heap of dirt. And he's telling Holmes, we dug up every inch of the garden without discovering anything. Brother Bartholomew was such a clever fellow. Do you know how he found out where the treasure was? Tell me, says Holmes.
Get to the fucking point.
We made measurements everywhere, all along the top, along the side, inside. He's pointing at the tower of the castle. And he found out he was 4 foot out at the top, which we also saw this in the Norwood Builder, right?
Mm-hmm.
A secret room.
It's a Norwood thing.
Yeah, all of the buildings have these secret rooms. We found our father made a false room. So Bartholomew smashed through the lath and the plaster, and there was the treasure chest lying across the rafters. He has computed the value of the treasure to be more than 1/2 million sterling.
More than 17.6 million today.
Which is, I mean, theoretically, that money would have been invested back in the day and would be worth even more now than even that. And then they hear a woman screaming and crying and shrieking. That must be Mrs. Bernstone, Thaddeus says. She's the only lady in the house. Wait here. And he leaves Watson and Mary in the carriage outside and Holmes on the front step. And he rushes inside. Mrs. Bernstone is sobbing and saying, Mr. Thaddeus, I'm so glad you've come, as he tries to comfort her. And the two are kind of like wailing and twittering at one another. She's clearly the housekeeper. Mary's looking at the torn up garden and saying, what a strange place. And Watson says, it's as if all the moles in England have been let loose in it.
An elderly woman is scream crying at this house with a whole lot of money, but do go ahead and critique landscaping right now.
Right. Thaddeus comes back outside and says, there's something amiss with Bartholomew. Into the house, Holmes yells. And they march in as Mrs. Bernstone continues to wail. Mr. Bartholomew shut himself up in his room and I can't get a word out of him, she says. His bed hasn't been slept in and he hasn't been down for any food. I dare not disturb him at his work. You must know what it's like when he's at his work.
But she's scream crying. It's like you found him dead or something. Like this isn't what you do when you're just kind of worried about somebody.
When someone won't answer the door.
Yeah. Well, what is wrong with you? Why are you crying?
Look after her, Miss Morstan, Holmes says, and Mary gets Mrs. Bernstone seated at the dining room table. And she's putting her head in her hands and everything as the men rush upstairs. And holy shit, that is an amazing wainscoting all the way up the stairs. Deeply jealous. Do you know what you have to do to take care of that stuff properly?
Yeah, I was gonna say the dusting must be a nightmare.
It's not just the dusting. You have to oil that shit once a month.
Yeah.
I mean, and this whole house is full of it. I'm amazed that they just have one housekeeper. They truly need like 50 maids to take care of all this.
Yeah.
So they go upstairs to the door of Bartholomew's room, and Holmes whips out his lockpicking kit, which he's conveniently brought with him. He kind of pushes in and knocks the key out of the keyhole onto a piece of newspaper.
Yeah, and he's put some paper underneath because he is a protagonist in an adventure game.
Right.
Get into locked rooms.
So he pokes out the key. It lands on the newspaper, that's stuck under the door. Holmes peers through the keyhole, and Bartholomew is at his laboratory table behind this construction that looks a lot like what Holmes has going on back in 221B. And Bartholomew is smiling, but not moving. And again, looks almost exactly like Wallace Shawn in this scene. A dead Wallace Shawn, unfortunately. There's something devilish in this, Watson, Holmes says, and Watson has a look for himself through the keyhole. Bartholomew's still not moving, and the weird smile on his face is it's very disturbing. Holmes pulls the key out on the newspaper and uses it to unlock the door. Clearly, Bartholomew is dead, and in front of him is another note with the sign of 4 on it. There's a ladder going up to the ceiling and a hole in the ceiling, and dust is coming down and plaster. And that primitive looking axe we saw in the opening scene is on Bartholomew's table. Also, Bartholomew's fingernails are disgusting. They're long and they're coated with like some grime, and it's just gross. I wanted to hurl.
Notice, but I love that you did.
I mean, it looks like he's been dead a while. Clearly he hasn't, but I mean, those are his fingernails, like when he's not dead. The sign of 4 again. What in God's name does it all mean? Watson says. It means murder, Holmes says. And Thaddeus comes in the room gesturing. We brought the treasure down there last night and we put it there. And he points to a place on the floor. No, it is gone. What time was that? Holmes says. I don't know, 6 or 7 o'clock. I heard him lock the door after I left. I must have been the last person to see him alive, and now he's dead. And he's going bananas. Mm-hmm. They'll think I did it. They'll think it was me. I wouldn't have. And he just like devolves into hysterics. And Holmes shoos him out the door to go to the police station.
He'll be somebody else's problem for a little while.
Right. Holmes, look at this, Watson says, reaching out to Bartholomew's corpse. Careful, Holmes shouts. Forgive me, it's poisoned.
Holmes is like, I am surrounded by children.
But he's grinning as he shuts the door. We have a little time. Let's make the most of it, he says, rubbing his hands together. This is an insoluble mystery to me. It grows darker instead of clearer, Watson says. No, it clears at every instant. I only require a few missing links to have an entirely connected case. As simple as the case seems now, there may be something deeper underlying it. How did these people come and how did they go? People? Watson asked. Well, it takes more than one, perhaps more than 2, to remove a heavy treasure chest from a place like this. The door hasn't been opened since last night. So how about these windows? And Holmes strides over to them. Snibbed on the inside. I'm sorry, I love the word snib. The little latch at the top of a double pane window. I did not know what those things were called, and now we know. They're snipped. No hinges, therefore. He pokes his head out the window. Roof quite out of reach, no drain pipe near, yet someone has entered this way. Look, Watson, see that scuff on the sill? Then Holmes drops to the carpet where there are prints of various sizes, muddying it up. But that's not a footmark, Watson protests, pointing at this perfectly round print. Something much more valuable to us. This is the mark of a boot, and this is the mark of a timber toe.
I kind of love that.
I know. It is a wooden-legged man, Watson exclaims. And someone else, a very able and efficient ally. And Holmes kind of gestures at the window behind him. Could you scale that wall, Watson?
And he kind of says it like, oh, you want me to scale the wall?
Right. And Watson goes and has a look down. I think he throws something out the window just to check the depth. Absolutely impossible, he says. Unaided, it is so. But suppose you had a friend who lowered you this good stout rope, and here
picks up a pile of rope on the floor. Like who doesn't have a pile of rope just lying around? Why should anybody have pointed to it before now and said, "What the fuck is this doing here?"
Securing it first to this ring, and there's like a huge brass ring in the wall. I think if you were an active man, you'd be able to swarm up, wooden leg and all. Holmes tosses the rope out the window. You would depart, of course, in the same fashion, and then your friend would pull up the rope, and he pulls up the rope, close the window, snib it on the inside, and depart in the manner he originally came. And Holmes, this is one moment. Holmes stands on the chair and gestures dramatically.
Yeah, and there's no reason for it.
None whatsoever. Well, the thing grows more unintelligible than ever. How about this mysterious ally? How did he get into the room? Watson says. Yes, this ally, Holmes replies. He lifts this place from the regions of the commonplace. Well, the door is locked, the window inaccessible, the grate's too small. How then? Watson says. You will.
I mean, there's a hole in the ceiling, but
yeah, right. Let's ignore that. You will not follow my precept. How often have I said to you that once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth? And this is the first time Holmes has uttered those words in this whole series.
Yes.
He must have come through the roof, Watson says. Excellent. Let us carry.
What gave that away? The giant hole with the ladder leading
Just the hole in the ceiling. Yes. Let us carry our research to the room above, the secret room in which the treasure was found. And Holmes goes up the ladder to a crawl space. It's covered in cobwebs. And he finds a tiny footprint, a little barefoot. Holmes, Watson says, looking on, a child has done this terrible thing. My memory failed me, Holmes muttered, for I should have been able to foretell it. There is nothing we can learn from here. Let us go down. And they descend back down to Bartholomew's room. What is your theory about these footmarks? Watson says. Try a little analysis. You know my methods. Apply them, Holmes says. So I can make fun of you. And he takes out his magnifying glass, staring at the floor. And again, there are these small black puddles on the carpet.
Yeah, like you don't need a magnifying glass to see them.
And also,
they're huge.
Along with the rope. I mean, you were looking at the footprints on, like, there's clues, abundant clues here, and you're just ignoring them. I cannot conceive of anything that will cover the facts, Watson protests. You will soon, says Holmes, instead of telling Watson what he's thinking. He ducks down to the floor and goes over to those little black puddles. We're in luck. Our little ally has trod in the creosote, and there's a tiny, dark little bare footprint on the carpet.
Which you don't need a magnifying glass to see.
No, you do not. And what is creosote doing on the carpet anyway? So at that point,
he didn't come in through the chimney.
No, I mean, there's no reason for it to be there. But, again, Conan Doyle doing his thing.
It's maybe an orangutan stuffed body is up the chimney.
Anything is possible. The police burst into the front hall. The detective inspector is marveling over the decor of the place, which I would do too. That is the representatives of the law, unless I'm very much mistaken, Holmes says, still on the floor. Now, Watson, before they come, what do you make of this poor fellow? And he gestures at Bartholomew, who, I mean, this actor, I have to say, has been frozen in place over the course of this whole scene, like not moving. I don't know. I don't think it was a dummy. I don't think they had the technology to do that back in 1987.
Yeah.
I think they made him like what do they call them? Living statues that stand there and don't move. The muscles are as stiff as a board, says Watson, a state of extreme contraction, far exceeding the usual rigor mortis. Quite so, coupled with this distortion of the face, the Hippocratic smile. What? The Hippocratic oath.
I believe we're assigning a personality to this man based on how you feel.
Like what? Rhesus sardonicus, as the old writers called it. Yeah, I'm sure they did. What would that suggest to your mind? Death from a powerful vegetable alkaloid, some strychnine-like substance that produces tetanus, Watson says. Strychnine does not produce tetanus. The police are loudly, meanwhile, coming up the stairs. Holmes holds up a long dart. I mean, again, that was on the table that everyone overlooked, like the creosote and the hole in the ceiling. This thorn, not an English thorn, and there's blood on the tip.
Is thorn just like the English word for dart?
I think so, yes. I mean, there are thorn trees that have these spiky things, like yew trees, and others, evergreen trees that have these long needle-like spikes.
But this was very clearly a dart.
No, this was a manufactured like dart with feathers on one end.
Yes.
I think it is not right that Miss Morstan remain in this stricken house, says Watson. I suggest you slip away and take her home and then go to 3 Pinchin Lane, Lambeth, and ask for Toby, Holmes says. I'd rather have Toby's help than the whole detective force of London. The whole detective force of London, meanwhile, arrives at Bartholomew's room. Well, here's a pretty business. Place is as full as a rabbit warren, says the detective, whose name is Jones. Athelney Jones, yes. Holmes whirls around, and the detective stops his men from coming into the room. I think you may recollect me, Holmes says. And Jones's face lights up. Why, of course I do. Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the theorist. I'll never forget that you lectured us all about the Bishopgate jewel case. True, you set us on the right track then. I think you'll own now it is more by good luck than good guidance. As usual, underestimating Holmes's reasoning abilities. Never be ashamed to own up. But what is all this? I mean, he's just insulting the hell out of Holmes. The inspector goes over to Bartholomew's desk and he picks up a taxidermied ferret. It's bad business, stern facts here, no room for theories. Apparently room for weasels, though. It's
picking up things in the room and
putting them down.
Wherever you like, yeah.
Violating the crime scene.
Yes.
It's lucky I happened to be up at Norwood on another case when I got the message. How do you think this man died? This is not a case for me to theorize over, Holmes demurs. No. Still, we can't deny you hit the nail on the head sometimes. Door locked, I understand. Jewels worth a fortune missing. How were the windows? Fastened, but there was a footstep on the sill, Holmes says. Windows fastened, nothing to do with it. It's common sense. Man could have died in a fit, I suppose. Ha! I have a theory. These flashes come to me sometimes. The inspector sends everybody outside the room, including Sholto, who's dying to come back in. And he closes the door. It's just him and Holmes and the dead Bartholomew. Sholto has confessed he was with his brother last night. The brother died in a fit. Sholto walks off with the treasure. How about that? Whereupon a dead man very considerately gets up and locks the door from the inside, Holmes says.
Yes, that was very kind of him.
Yes, enormously. There's a thaw in there somewhere, the inspector says. Let us apply common sense to the matter. They were brothers. There was a quarrel. Brother Bartholomew dead, jewels gone, and Master Thaddeus evidently in a disturbed state of mind, his appearance not attractive. The inspector is gesturing. You see him weaving a web around Thaddeus. The net begins to close upon him. Jones, that splinter, Holmes says, nodding at the dart, which is anything but a splinter. It's about yeah,
it's like 6 inches long.
Yes. Jones picks it up, which I firmly believe to be poison. Jones puts it back down. That card and that curiously shaped instrument were lying there on the table. Confirms my theory in every respect. The house is full of Indian curiosities. All point to Thaddeus. And Jones climbs up the ladder to the crawl space. There's a trapdoor in the roof. And he calls his constable to get Sholto to come in. You see, facts are better than theories after all. There's a trapdoor communicating with the roof, and it is partly open, and he's ridiculously smug. It was I who opened it, Holmes says. Jones is undeterred and begins to recite the British version of the Miranda warning, arresting Thaddeus.
Is clearly enjoying himself.
Yes. And Thaddeus is back in hysterics. Didn't I tell you, he said to Holmes. Don't trouble yourself, Mr. Sholto, Holmes says. I think I can engage to clear you of this charge. Don't promise too much, Mr. Theorist, says Jones. You may find it a harder matter than you think, and we really don't like Jones at all. Not only will I clear Mr. Sholto, but I will give you a description of the men who were in this room last night. One was a poorly educated man, strong, active, with his right leg off, wearing a stump worn away on the inside. His left
likely an inspector with the Thames Valley Police. You should ask.
Yes. His left boot has a coarse, square-toed sole. It has an iron band around the heel. He's much sunburned, middle-aged, and has a certain amount of skin missing from the palm of one hand. Holmes picks up the dart again, and he's fingering the feather at his base. And the other one, Jones says, he's rather a curious person. I hope before long to be able to introduce you to the pair of them, Holmes says. So meanwhile, Watson's at Pinchin Lane, which basically is this large street that has warehouses with carts and horses and a man lying on this platform, drunk and asleep. So it's not the greatest area of London. And Watson goes to door number 3, knocking as a dog is barking furiously in the background, and he's yelling, "Mr. Toby! Mr. Toby!" A man sticks his head out of an upstairs window, yelling at Watson to stop, or I'll turn my dogs on you, all 43 of them. And he's assuming Watson is a drunkard as well. "I'm looking for Mr. Toby," Watson says. And the man continues to threaten him like he says he's got a snake in a bag and he's going to drop it on Watson's head. And Watson invokes Sherlock Holmes, at which point the man's like, "Oh, okay." And he comes downstairs and lets Watson in. His house is full of parrots and chickens and a llama and a bear and a monkey.
A python, right?
Python. It's insane. And probably smells horrific.
Probably, yeah.
And how the bear hasn't torn up the whole scene and eaten everything in sight, I don't know. Toby is a dog in a crate. And the man gives Watson some treats for Toby. Toby's a cutie. Holmes, meanwhile, is up on the roof of Pondicherry Lodge, walking around. Watson brings Toby back, and Holmes greets Watson from the top of a tower. And Toby, they've trained him well. He looks up at Holmes, clearly recognizing him. It's very sweet, as Holmes shinnies down the exterior of the house.
There's a point where his foot slips and Toby gasps.
Yes, it's very cute. I think he's like a border collie mix, I want to say.
Like that.
Yeah. When Holmes gets to Watson, he throws something at him. "Look at these. I found them in the gutter. Do you smell the creosote?" So I guess the creosote was lining the gutter and the roof.
Yeah.
It is, okay, so this thing that he's tossed is like a leather kind of scroll, kind of like his pickpocketing toolkit, but bigger, with more of those little darts or not little darts, big darts, and a little blowpipe inside. And he tells Watson that Jones has arrested practically everyone. "I was lucky to escape myself."
I love that line.
"What hellish things," Watson says, looking at the blowpipe and the darts. "Are you on for a bit of a trudge?" Holmes says. "Of course," Watson says. "You and Toby, game as they come when it's good holding scent." Holmes gives Toby the leather scroll containing the tools to smell. "Now go find him. Go, Toby." And Toby's off on the trail. And that's where we're cutting out for this week when it comes to the narration.
That was fun. I enjoyed this one.
I did too. Yeah. There's a lot more adventure in it than, even with the long stories and whatnot. We're about to go into a serious sequence of action scenes.
Yeah.
And a great like little trip down the Thames.
Yes.
A crazy little trip down the Thames. And more very interesting casting. So yeah, I'm actually, wait. Yeah, no. I'm just trying to think who plays. Well, I don't want to do any spoilers, but anyway.
For a 140-year-old.
I know, but people are, yeah. I mean, I know people aren't. The 3 people who listen to this are not listening to the plot. But any observations that you had that we didn't cover in the notes?
I think we covered most of what I have.
Really, really, really want to stay at the hotel. Really can't afford it, but
I want to tour that castle.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, that castle. It went through a whole lot of different ownership, and now it's one of these. I guess they sold it back to what's the National Trust or whatever, and it's a wedding venue now.
Oh God.
Like all the other castles.
Well, it's better than plantations like we do in this country.
Only by a little tiny bit. Who do you think paid for these castles? So yeah, Oh my God. And a lot of them are filled with, these blackamoor sculptures of African, mostly children, holding up heavy trays and with chains around. I mean, it's really horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And there's a great, actually, and I didn't make notes about this, but it just came to my mind. David Harewood, the actor, right? So he's a Black British actor, but the Harewoods were very prominent because one of them was married to Princess Mary. They're the Lassells family.
Wow.
Yeah. And the Harewood House is this, again, another castle. And Princess Mary lived there. And there was a TV show where David Harewood goes there and talks with David Lassells about the links with the slave trade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's I need to find it. It's because David Harewood came from Barbados. His ancestors came from Barbados and were enslaved by the Earls of Harewood.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're not as far removed from the slave trade as they want to like make it. Oh yeah, well we banned slavery in 18 blah blah blah. Yeah, you did, but but you benefited from it for a long time prior.
And a lot of those antiques stolen from other countries.
Right. All the ones in this house that, I mean, can you imagine? I can't even imagine having a tiger rug with a full head taxidermied.
My mother has a tiger rug, but it's like fleece. She has it in her morning room. It's very cute.
That's different. And IKEA sells fake sheepskin little throw rugs.
Oh.
Yeah. My kids each had one. My brother gave them to him one Christmas. And I found out later that all of the furs in Game of Thrones, the costumers just went to IKEA and bought a ton of these fake sheepskin rugs and dyed them. And so when you see Jon Snow in his big cape with the fur around it, it's one of those rugs that they
He's probably sweating to death in it.
He was actually, and the cape itself was very, very heavy.
Yeah.
And he found it really hard to move. He said something like, I was the most fit I've ever been because I was walking around in this stupid cape.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, anything else? I love the connection of the hotel to Dracula and
yes.
And to Oscar Wilde. And I mean, all these people were operating around the same time. It was such a huge literary scene.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all that I have.
Okay.
So that's all from us this week. If you enjoyed the show and haven't subscribed yet, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to support us, you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends. And join us next week when we'll be discussing The Sign of 4, Part 2.
Part 2. Okay. Off on a chase with Toby.
Yes.
All right. Bye.
Bye.